A prince can return to his country and still hear the silence speak louder than any welcome. In early January 2026, as grey winter fog pressed low over London, Prince Harry stepped off a commercial flight at Heathrow. No motorcade followed, no palace liaison appeared. According to British outlets including The Times and the BBC's Royal Desk, the visit was personal and legal. But what stunned royal watchers was what did not follow. No invitation to Clarence House, no quiet meeting arranged at Windsor, no message from his father, King Charles III. Sources close to Harry told The Guardian that the reality hit quickly. One insider paraphrased his reaction bluntly: Harry believed he was coming home, only to realize there is no home base anymore. Another source, said Harry, confided to a friend that the absence of contact felt final, in a way nothing before ever had. Behind palace walls, the tone was equally stark. A senior aide, quoted by The Telegraph, described the situation with chilling precision. There was no decision to exclude him. We simply didn't factor him in. In the royal system, that distinction is seismic. Being barred invites drama. Being ignored signals closure. By late 2025, this outcome had already been set in motion. Christmas at Sandringham marked the clearest turning point. Cameras captured Prince William, Catherine, and the senior royals walking together to church, while Harry and Meghan remained in California. According to Sky News, William had been unequivocal in private discussions weeks earlier. He was reported to have told advisors, "We are not doing half in, half out in any form emotionally or institutionally." That line, aides say, became policy. As Harry prepared for his January return, he was aware the atmosphere had changed. Yet sources say he still hoped for a private acknowledgement from his brother. None came. According to a Kensington Palace source, cited by The Times, William's position was unambiguous. If nothing has changed, nothing can be reopened. Another insider added that William had grown weary of what he viewed as permanent renegotiation, telling colleagues, "Every silence gets reinterpreted. I'm done leaving space." For Harry, the shock was not confrontation but its absence. A friend of the Duke told The Guardian that Harry struggled most with the lack of response, saying he felt it sent a harsher message than any argument. "At least when they're angry, you still exist," he reportedly said. "This feels like being erased." Catherine's role has quietly reinforced that reality. Often described as a calming bridge within the family, she has declined to intervene. According to The Telegraph, she made her position clear internally, stating, "My focus is on what we are building, not what we are revisiting." Royal commentators note that Catherine's withdrawal from any mediating role effectively sealed the family consensus. King Charles, meanwhile, remains emotionally torn. Sources quoted by the BBC say the king privately expressed sadness over the distance with his younger son, telling aides, "I will always love him, but love does not fix this." Still, Charles has deferred operational control to William. One senior courtier described a telling moment from late 2025, when Charles reportedly said, "The future must be steady. I cannot keep reopening wounds." That shift has consequences far beyond one visit. For Harry, January 2026 confirmed a new status, present in Britain, but absent from royal life. A columnist for The Times described him as family by blood, external by design. Palace schedules were not adjusted. No doors were opened. Routine continued, unchanged. As one aide put it, "When the routine doesn't bend, the message is unmistakable." For Meghan and their two children, the implications are even more profound. Without invitations, informal access, or shared rituals, Archie and Lilibet's connection to the monarchy is becoming abstract. A royal historian told The Guardian that Harry himself has acknowledged this reality, reportedly saying, "My children won't know this world the way I did." It's not micey. That recognition, sources say, has been painful but clarifying. This is not exile. No announcement has been made, no titles stripped in public view. Instead, the monarchy has chosen something colder and more effective: administrative distance. The British press has begun calling it a quiet severance, achieved not through confrontation, but through consistency. Or as one senior royal source summed it up with unsettling calm, "The door wasn't slammed, we just stopped holding it open. It racked nagor neverdy." And for Prince Harry, standing once again on British soil, that silence may have been the loudest statement of all. Silence had always been the heir's weapon, until the day he decided it no longer worked. By mid-January 2026, the pattern was undeniable. Prince William had chosen a different posture, one that startled even seasoned royal watchers. For most of his adult life, William absorbed speculation without response. He let rumors run, allowed insinuations to circulate, and trusted that restraint would protect both family and institution. But according to multiple British outlets, including The Times and Sky News, that strategy had reached its breaking point. Silence stopped containing the damage, one advisor said. It started enabling it. The shift did not arrive with a press conference. It arrived with a line short, declarative, and unmistakable, circulated internally in late 2025, and later referenced by royal correspondents. William, sources say, told his team, there will be no pathway back through ambiguity. The message was not designed for headlines, it was designed to end them. Insiders described the moment as a reckoning shaped by years of incremental pressure. Each carefully worded palace statement about Harry and Meghan had left room for reinterpretation, space for maybes, later, and private conversations. Those gaps became leverage. According to The Guardian, William had grown convinced that every unclosed door invited another cycle of speculation. He reportedly told a senior aide, "If everything is provisional, nothing is stable." This was not an emotional outburst. Those close to William emphasize its calculation. By putting his name directly behind a firm internal stance, he made clear that the decision did not originate with advisors or protocol. It came from him. A former palace press secretary told Sky News, "When William speaks this directly, negotiation is over. It's not a warning, it's closure." The implications rippled quickly through the family. Catherine, often perceived as the monarchy's quiet anchor, was among the first to grasp what the shift meant. Her concern, sources say, was not one incident, but a pattern. By autumn 2025, Catherine had begun tracking the timing of negative coverage that followed her public initiatives, early childhood programs, mental health campaigns, long-term policy work. According to The Telegraph, she documented multiple instances where hostile narratives surfaced within 48 hours of major appearances. When she brought the records to William, the impact was immediate. An aide paraphrased her assessment as calm but direct. "This isn't noise, it's coordinated." For William, that reframed everything. What once looked like family fallout now appeared to be a strategic vulnerability, one that targeted the woman who would one day be queen. Security briefings in November 2025 hardened his resolve. Royal protection teams, tracking online harassment campaigns, reportedly identified networks amplifying identical talking points at synchronized times. A source familiar with the briefing told The Times that the conclusion was uncomfortable but clear. A significant portion of the activity traced back to pro-Sussex ecosystems. William's reaction, relayed by an aide, was stark. "Then this stops being personal." From that point, the calculus changed. Ambiguity was no longer neutral. It was harmful. Watching Catherine absorb sustained pressure while maintaining composure crystallized William's view that inaction had consequences. Every half measure, he told colleagues, creates room for interference. Others reinforced that conclusion. Princess Anne, known for her precision and discipline, delivered what aides describe as a defining intervention. She did not raise her voice. She did not soften her words. "You cannot protect everyone," she said. "At some point, you choose the institution or the individual, creating instability." Those present recall that the room fell silent. Anne's clarity shattered the illusion of a middle path. William had searched for balance, hoping to shield family while preserving the crown. Anne made it plain that such balance no longer existed. A senior courtier later reflected, she articulated what others were avoiding. Institutions survive by drawing lines. Meanwhile, King Charles III struggled with the emotional weight of that line. According to the BBC, Charles confided to a trusted aide that he felt trapped between love and duty. He wanted reconciliation, but the constant cycles of speculation left him exhausted. As one aide recounted, Charles admitted, "Hope has begun to paralyze us." Ultimately, he deferred, not because he wanted to, but because he trusted William to lead. That trust mattered. By December 2025, the consensus was set. No test runs, no trial balloons. William's position was final. When he told his inner circle, "This decision will be permanent," it was not framed as punishment. It was definition. For Harry, the effect was devastating in its simplicity. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no last-minute reconciliation scene. The door did not slam, it closed quietly and locked. For Meghan, the loss of ambiguity stripped away leverage that had long shaped her narrative options. For their children, it meant growing up outside the rhythms that define royal belonging. Royal observers describe this as a turning point that reveals the King William intends to be decisive, protective, and unafraid of hard boundaries. As one historian told The Guardian, this wasn't about anger, it was about control of narrative, of risk, of the future. And with that choice, the longest unresolved chapter in modern royal history moved from speculation to record. Not with fury, not with spectacle, but with resolve that left no room for misunderstanding. Being a father is instinct. Being a king is restraint. And sometimes, restraint wins. By late January 2026, the emotional center of the crisis had shifted inward toward King Charles III himself. While headlines focused on William's decisiveness and Harry's exclusion, those close to the monarch described a man carrying the heaviest burden of all. According to BBC royal correspondents, Charles had privately acknowledged what he could no longer reverse. "I can love my son," he reportedly told a confidant, "but I cannot keep rescuing him from consequences." That admission marked a turning point. For years, Charles had hoped time would soften the rift, that distance might cool tempers, and allow reconciliation to emerge organically. But by the end of 2025, each pause only generated new speculation, new commentary, and renewed strain on the institution. A senior aide told The Times that Charles had grown frustrated by what he described as endless loops, saying, "Every delay becomes a story. Every story becomes pressure." The king's health concerns added urgency. Palace sources noted that autumn 2025 had been relentless. Continuous crisis management, staff exhaustion, and international partners quietly questioning stability. According to Sky News, Charles confided during one briefing, "I feel as though the crown is always reacting, never leading." That sense of drift weighed heavily. Leadership, he realized, could not be indefinitely postponed in the name of family harmony. It was within this context that Charles stepped back and allowed Prince William to take the reins. The decision was not framed as abdication, but as trust. A constitutional expert interviewed by The Guardian described it as an early handover of practical authority, subtle but significant. Charles reportedly told his son, "Do what you believe is right for the future. I will stand behind you." That endorsement mattered. With it, the boundary William had drawn gained royal weight. There would be no competing signals, no quiet undermining from the throne. One palace insider summarized the shift succinctly. Once the king stopped reopening the conversation, it was over. For Prince Harry, the realization was slow but devastating. Friends told The Guardian that Harry struggled most with understanding when the change occurred. "He thought the door was always there," one source said. "He didn't realize it had been closing for years." Harry reportedly expressed disbelief that no final conversation had taken place, telling a confidant, "Families talk, this feels like paperwork." Yet paperwork is precisely how the monarchy operates. Routine, protocol, and schedules carry meaning. When those routines no longer flex, the message is unmistakable. Harry's absence from family events was no longer explained away, it was normalized. The impact on Meghan Markle was equally stark. Without institutional ambiguity, the narrative landscape shifted. Royal commentators noted that Meghan's leverage, long sustained by the possibility of return or partial inclusion, had evaporated. According to The Telegraph, a source close to the Sussexes acknowledged, "The maybe is gone." Meghan herself was said to be pragmatic, remarking privately, "Then we build without them." But observers cautioned that building without royal proximity is an entirely different challenge. The most profound consequences, however, may be reserved for the children. Archie and Lilibet, still young, are growing up without the lived experiences that shape royal identity ceremony, continuity, and collective memory. A historian interviewed by The Times noted, "Royal belonging isn't genetic, it's practiced. Without regular contact, rituals, or recognition, that belonging fades. Even within the palace, there is awareness of the emotional cost." One aide described Charles as quietly reflective, admitting, "This is not how I imagine my family." Yet he also recognized the necessity. "The crown cannot absorb endless uncertainty," he reportedly said. "It must stand still long enough for the country to trust it." For William, the path forward is clear. For Harry, the ground has shifted beneath his feet. For Meghan, the future is self-determined but unbuffered. And for two children growing up oceans away, the monarchy is becoming a story told secondhand, not a world lived from within. This chapter is not defined by confrontation, but by acceptance. The monarchy has chosen structure over sentiment, clarity over hope. As one royal correspondent concluded on Sky News, History will debate whether this was cruel or necessary, but it will not debate that it was decisive. Bayern's life. In reculus staprid, perisly ominis. And with that decisiveness, the family drama has transformed into something far more enduring, a redefinition of who belongs, who leads, and who watches from the outside as the crown moves forward without looking back. They didn't need to speak. Their alignment said everything. By February 2026, it had become clear that the most decisive force inside the monarchy was not a single man, but a quiet, unified front of women who had chosen the crown over complication. While public attention remained fixed on brothers divided and a father torn, the internal balance of the royal household had already shifted. Catherine, Princess Anne, and Sophie had reached the same conclusion independently and then together. The line had to be held. Catherine's position was the most closely watched. For years, commentators had speculated that she might act as a bridge between the brothers, the one figure capable of softening William's resolve. But by late 2025, that assumption no longer held. According to the Telegraph, Catherine had quietly declined multiple suggestions, both internal and external, that she intervene. Her reasoning, relayed by a senior aide, was stark. Any step I take backward weakens what we are building forward. Those close to her say Catherine viewed the situation not as a family disagreement, but as a pattern that threatened long-term stability. After months of negative narratives coinciding with her public work, she had reached a private conclusion. "This isn't about feelings," she reportedly told William. "It's about function." From that point on, she withdrew completely from the Sussex question, focusing instead on her early childhood initiative and her future role as queen. In royal terms, that withdrawal was not passive, it was decisive. Princess Anne's stance was even more explicit. Known throughout the palace as the embodiment of duty without sentimentality, Anne had little patience for prolonged ambiguity. According to the Times, she delivered her view during a closed-door discussion with characteristic clarity. "You cannot run an institution on unresolved exceptions," she said. "Either someone is in, or they are not." Anne's words carried weight because of her record. Decades of service, minimal controversy, and an unshakable understanding of constitutional survival gave her moral authority few could challenge. One aide recalled her summation with surgical precision. "Family loyalty does not override structural risk." For William, those words crystallized what he already sensed. For Charles, they removed any remaining doubt. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, played a different but no less critical role. Often underestimated by the press, Sophie has long been regarded within royal circles as a stabilizer, a figure trusted with sensitive diplomacy and internal morale. According to Sky News, Sophie had grown increasingly concerned about staff fatigue and reputational drag caused by ongoing Sussex-related speculation. In one internal conversation, she reportedly remarked, "We cannot keep asking people to defend silence." Her concern was practical rather than personal. Palace staff, she noted, were spending disproportionate time managing narratives that had no resolution. That, she argued, was unsustainable. By supporting a clean break, however quiet, Sophie aligned herself firmly with the future-facing camp. Her message was clear: stability required closure. What made this alignment remarkable was not coordination, but convergence. There was no formal pact, no dramatic meeting of minds. Each woman arrived at the same conclusion through different experiences. Catherine through exposure to targeted pressure, Anne through institutional memory, Sophie through operational strain. Together, they formed an internal consensus that left no room for mediation. For Prince Harry, this was perhaps the most jarring development of all. Friends told The Guardian that Harry had long believed the women of the family might advocate on his behalf. When that did not happen, he reportedly expressed disbelief. "They know me," he said privately. "They know this isn't who I am." But knowing someone, as Anne had made clear, was no longer the metric. Function was. Meghan, watching from California, understood the shift differently. According to sources cited by the Telegraph, she recognized that the absence of female allies inside the palace meant the narrative terrain had fundamentally changed. "There's no internal counterweight anymore," she reportedly acknowledged. Without that counterweight, every future move would be interpreted without royal context or cushioning. For the monarchy, the effect was immediate. The internal noise dropped, messaging became consistent, schedules stabilized. A senior aide described the atmosphere in early 2026 as noticeably calmer, adding, "Once the line was set, everyone stopped waiting for it to move. To armament, and defecation, and ended his coffin, And a defecation. Royal historians note that this moment may prove more consequential than any single statement. By choosing the crown collectively and silently, these women ensured that the decision would endure beyond personalities. As one analyst told The Times, "Men announce, institutions survive because women enforce." In the end, no speech was given, no interview granted. Yet the message echoed unmistakably through the palace corridors. The future would not be negotiated in fragments. It would be built with alignment, discipline, and boundaries that did not bend under pressure. And with that, the last hope of an internal rescue for Harry quietly dissolved, not in anger, not in betrayal, but in consensus. Freedom looks different when the crown is no longer in the room. By the time February 2026 arrived, the shift surrounding Meghan Markle was no longer theoretical. It was operational. The quiet closure of royal access did not come with a press release or a confrontation, but its effects were immediate and measurable. No invitations, no coordination, no institutional backing, implicit or otherwise. For the first time since her marriage, Meghan's future unfolded entirely outside the gravitational pull of the monarchy. For years, Meghan's public positioning benefited from what royal commentators often called adjacency. Even after stepping back in 2020, the possibility, however remote, of partial reintegration or symbolic association remained. That possibility shaped headlines, negotiations, and brand perception. But with the door now firmly closed, that buffer disappeared. A senior media analyst quoted by The Telegraph summed it up bluntly. "The maybe was the asset. Once it's gone, everything recalibrates." Those close to Meghan say she recognized the change quickly. According to a source cited by The Guardian, she acknowledged privately, "There's no gray area left." The comment was not framed as defeat, but as realism. Meghan has never lacked ambition or discipline. What changed was the terrain. Without royal context, every move would now be judged on standalone merit, without the intrigue, protection, or symbolism that once amplified her platform. The implications extend beyond branding. Invitations to global events, philanthropic partnerships, and high-level convenings had often relied on her royal association, even after departure. In early 2026, several of those relationships entered what one industry insider called review mode. Not severed, but reconsidered. A source familiar with US-based philanthropic circles told Variety, "When the royal link becomes historical rather than current, the calculus shifts." Meghan's response has been to double down on independence. Sources close to her say she has reframed the moment as liberation, telling confidants, "Then we build without permission." Projects already in development, media ventures, advocacy work, and commercial partnerships have been positioned explicitly outside any royal framing. The messaging is deliberate, self-made, self-directed, and unencumbered. Yet observers caution that independence cuts both ways. Without institutional insulation, criticism lands harder. Missteps carry more weight, and narratives can no longer be deflected by invoking palace dynamics. A royal historian interviewed by The Times noted, "When you leave the system completely, you also lose its shock absorbers." For Meghan and Prince Harry, this reality has sharpened conversations about their children's future. Archie and Lilibet, now firmly rooted in California, are growing up without proximity to royal life. According to sources close to the couple, Meghan has been pragmatic about that outcome, reportedly saying, "They don't need a palace to know who they are." The sentiment reflects a clear philosophical divide from the institution they left behind. Still, the long-term implications are complex. Royal identity is not only about titles or lineage, it is about immersion. Rituals, relationships, and continuity form an ecosystem that cannot be replicated from afar. Without regular contact, Archie and Lilibet's connection to the monarchy becomes abstract, an inheritance of stories rather than experiences. As one commentator wrote in The Guardian, "They will inherit the name, but not the memory." From the palace perspective, Meghan's new trajectory is accepted, not contested. There is no effort to counter her narrative, nor to correct it. That silence is intentional. A senior aide described the strategy succinctly: "We don't respond to paths that no longer intersect with ours." The monarchy has drawn its boundary and is content to let events unfold beyond it. For Meghan, the moment is both clarifying and constraining. The crown no longer defines her, but it no longer elevates her either. Every success will be her own, every failure too. That is the price of autonomy, and by all accounts, she understands it. What remains is a future shaped by choice rather than connection. Meghan without the crown is not diminished, but she is unbuffered. The institution she once stood beside has moved on with discipline and silence. She, in turn, is charting a course that no longer looks back. And in that separation lies the final truth of this chapter. Freedom, once fully granted, comes without guarantees. They will carry the bloodline, but not the blueprint. Enclausices, free stings with mated. Enclausices with reses. By March 2026, the longest shadow cast by the royal rupture no longer falls on Prince Harry or Meghan Markle, but on two children growing up far from palace gates. Archie and Lilibet are still young, one old enough to ask questions, the other too young to understand the answers, but their future has already been quietly rerouted. Not by decree, not by punishment, by distance. Inside royal circles, the assessment is blunt. Children do not inherit roles by name alone. They inherit them through presence, repetition, and memory. Without that ecosystem, royal identity shifts from lived reality to family folklore. As one royal historian told The Times, dynasties survive on proximity. When proximity ends, continuity becomes symbolic. Harry has acknowledged this privately. According to a source cited by The Guardian, he admitted to friends, "My children won't know this world the way I did." The comment was not delivered with anger, but with clarity. He understands what has been lost not just for himself, but for the next generation. No balcony moments, no Sandringham Christmas walks, no quiet familiarity with a world that once shaped him. For Archie, now 6, the monarchy already exists as a concept rather than an environment. He knows the names, the titles, the photographs, but they belong to another place. Harry has reportedly explained it simply, "This is where we come from. This is not where we live." That distinction draws a clean line between origin and obligation. Lilibet, younger still, may never form conscious memories of royal life at all. Her connection to the crown is almost entirely nominal, an echo of history rather than an experience of it. Royal commentators often point out the irony. She carries one of the most symbolically powerful names in modern monarchy, yet grows up entirely outside its orbit. Meghan's view is pragmatic. Sources quoted by The Telegraph say she has long believed her children's identity should not depend on titles or proximity to the palace. "They don't need the institution to know who they are," she has reportedly said. From her perspective, distance is protection, freedom from expectation, scrutiny, and inherited constraint. But protection comes with a cost. Royal belonging is not only burden, it is access, continuity, and shared memory. Without it, Archie and Lilibet inherit a story that pauses before it reaches them. As one analyst put it on Sky News, they will know the story, but they won't live inside it. From the palace side, the position is settled. The children are family, but they are not being integrated into the future structure of the monarchy. No ceremonial planning, no long-term roles. As one senior aide stated quietly, "You cannot prepare children for a life they will not lead. If you wanted the Dowler, and I made decided AB." For Harry, this reality has reframed the meaning of legacy. Once, leaving was about control. Now, it is about consequence. According to a friend, he has reflected privately, "I chose this path. They didn't." That acknowledgement carries weight, not regret, but responsibility. And that is how this chapter ends. Not with confrontation, not with revenge, but with definition. A monarchy that chose certainty over ambiguity. A family divided by boundaries, not fury. And two children growing up free from the crown, yet forever shaped by its absence. Thank you for watching this deep dive. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and stay with us for more documentary-style analysis as we continue to follow how this royal story reshapes the future, one quiet decision at a time.